Ambassador Marcus Webb stood at the center of the grand chamber, a massive crystalline dome that stretched higher than any building on Earth. 3,000 alien representatives surrounded him in circular tiers that rose into the shadows above. Their eyes, some human-like, others completely alien, all focused on the single human standing. Alone on the gleaming floor, the air hummed with translation devices, converting thousands of languages simultaneously. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing Earth's crimes in burning red letters. Marcus could see his own face repeated 100 times on the screens, each one marked with accusations. High Arbiter Velng rose from the central throne. He was Chronothi, a species that had ruled the Council for 600 years. His 6 eyes gleamed like black pearls as he leaned forward, his massive body casting shadows across the chamber floor. Ambassador Webb, Velng's voice boomed through the chamber, amplified and translated instantly. Humanity stands accused before this council. In 30 years of membership, your species has committed 17 violations of council law. You have manipulated markets. You have hoarded technology. You have accumulated wealth that species 10 times your age have not achieved. Explain yourself. Marcus said nothing. He simply stood there, hands clasped behind his back, his expression calm. Around him, the chamber erupted with voices. A chitter delegate, insect-like with compound eyes, clicked frantically. Humans undercut our mining operations across 4 sectors. They somehow extract resources at half our cost. A Delphinian, aquatic and shimmering, added her complaint. They stole our trade routes. Ships that used our ports now dock at human stations. The massive Gorith delegation, each member 3 times Marcus's height, bellowed their grievance. Human mercenaries are too effective. They end conflicts too quickly. They destabilize the natural order of war. More accusations piled on. Humans were too smart, too efficient, too successful. They worked too hard. They solved problems too quickly. They made everyone else look bad. Verlaine raised a massive hand and silence fell. The vote has been taken, Ambassador. The decision is final. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council. All treaties are void. All agreements terminated. Earth's coordinates will be classified as restricted space. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from Council territory. The chamber waited for the outburst. For protests. For appeals. For anger. Every species that had ever faced expulsion had fought back with words, threats, or desperate pleas. Marcus Webb smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just won a game nobody else knew they were playing. The Council's decision is noted and accepted, Marcus said, his voice quiet but somehow carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. Humanity will comply fully. We will be gone in 20 days, not 30. We will leave peacefully and without incident. The silence that followed was profound. Velng's 6 eyes narrowed with suspicion. You accept? The High Arbiter asked. Just like that? Just like that, Marcus confirmed. He turned slowly, making eye contact with delegates across the chamber. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. We wish the Council the very best in all future endeavors. May you prosper in our absence. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing on the crystal floor. As the massive doors opened before him, he paused and looked back one final time. You won't hear from us again unless you ask very nicely. Then he was gone. In the chamber, Junior Counselor Tira of the Venn Collective leaned toward her superior. Why do I feel like we just made a terrible mistake? Her superior waved dismissively. They're just one species out of thousands. What could possibly go wrong? The message reached every human in Council space within an hour. Short, simple, and clear. Pack up. Settle all accounts. Leave peacefully. 20 days on the industrial world of Kragos Prime. Victoria Hayes supervised the shutdown of the largest fusion reactor complex in the sector. She had designed and built the facility 3 years ago, transforming Kragos from a struggling colony into an industrial powerhouse. Plant manager, Drelk watched nervously as Victoria's team packed their equipment. "You'll leave the operating manual, yes?" "Everything is documented in the system," Victoria assured him. "Standard galactic protocols." What she did not mention was that the reactor was not standard at all. She had redesigned it using principles that would not be discovered by Council science for another 30 years. The manual described what the reactor did, but not how to maintain the delicate balance that made it work. On Thelmer Medical Station, Dr. Raymond Foster finished his final surgery. The patient was a high-ranking senator's daughter, and the operation saved her life. As he cleaned up, the station director burst into the operating room. "Dr. Foster, please reconsider. We have 50 critical patients who need you." Raymond's face showed genuine sympathy. "I've transferred all my case files to Dr. Keller. He's an excellent physician." What Raymond did not say was that Dr. Keller had no idea how to perform the innovative techniques Raymond had developed. Those techniques had never been published or formally taught. Raymond had simply done what seemed obvious to him, combining human medical knowledge with an intuitive understanding of alien physiology that he could not easily explain on the financial world of Nexus. James Park closed out Earth's investment portfolio with mathematical precision. His fingers flew across holographic displays, executing thousands of transactions per second. Senior economist Plev watched the numbers cascade across his own screens, his face growing pale. "This cannot be correct. If you withdraw these positions, the entire sector will—" "Everything is legal," James said calmly. "The Council voided our agreements. We're simply exercising our rights." What Plev was watching was not just the withdrawal of human money. It was the collapse of a complex web of investments, loans, and guarantees that humans had woven throughout Council finance. They had been the invisible safety net catching failures before they happened. Now that net was being removed. In the Council chambers, High Arbiter Veln celebrated with his inner circle. Crystal glasses clinked together in triumph. "Humanity has learned its place," Veln announced. "Without our protection, our markets, our technology sharing, Earth will fade into irrelevance within a generation." Councillor Marix raised his glass. "They grew too ambitious?" "This will serve as a lesson to other upstart species." Only Terra remained quiet, studying reports on her datapad. The human exodus was proceeding with disturbing efficiency. No protests, no delays, no sabotage. Just calm, professional withdrawal. "They seem prepared for this," she said quietly. "Nonsense," Veln dismissed. "They're simply accepting reality." By day 10, small problems began appearing. On Kragos Prime, the fusion reactor's efficiency dropped 3%. Engineers scratched their heads, unable to determine why. On Thelmer Medical Station, 2 patients died during routine procedures. Dr. Keller reviewed the procedures 3 times, unable to understand what went wrong. He had followed Dr. Foster's documentation exactly. On Nexus, 3 investment firms quietly declared bankruptcy. The failures seemed unconnected, just normal market fluctuation. These incidents were reported but not connected. Not yet. Marcus Webb boarded the last diplomatic transport leaving Council space. Earth hung in the viewing screen behind them, growing smaller as they accelerated away. His assistant, Patricia Lawrence, sat beside him. "Did we do the right thing, Ambassador?" Marcus looked at his datapad, watching alerts cascade across the screen. Reports from across Council space showed minor failures, small inefficiencies, tiny problems beginning to multiply. "We did exactly what they asked," Marcus said. "We left quietly. And now?" "Now we wait and see how long it takes them to understand what we actually did for them." The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Council space behind. The 20-day exodus was complete. Every human was gone. The Council had gotten exactly what they wanted. Soon they would understand what they had actually lost. 3 weeks after the humans left, Plant Manager Drelk stood in the reactor control room on Kragos Prime, staring at numbers that made no sense. The massive fusion reactor that powered the entire industrial complex was running at 68% efficiency and dropping. "Run the diagnostic again," he ordered his chief engineer, the engineer. A Vryn named Keswick manipulated the holographic controls with his 4 arms. Sir, I have run it 17 times. The result is always the same. Something is wrong, but I cannot identify what. Drelk pulled up the documentation Victoria Hayes had left behind. Page after page of technical specifications, maintenance schedules, and operating procedures. Everything looked perfect on screen. It says to recalibrate the magnetic containment field using standard protocols, Drelk read aloud. Why is that not working? Keswick zoomed in on a schematic. Sir, look at these modifications. The human engineer integrated systems in ways I have never seen. The documentation tells us what each component does, but not how they work together. It is like having instructions to bake bread that list all ingredients, but not when to add them or how long to bake. Below them, in the industrial complex, machines began shutting down as power fluctuated. Warning lights flashed across 50 factory floors. 10,000 workers watched production lines grind to a halt. Drelk made a decision he never thought he would make. He sent an emergency message to the council, requesting human assistance. The reply came back 3 days later, request denied. Humanity is expelled. No exceptions. On Thelmer Medical Station, Dr. Keller sat in an empty conference room, his head in his hands. 16 patients had died in 3 weeks. 16 people who would have lived under Dr. Foster's care. The inquiry board had questioned him for 6 hours. He had shown them every procedure, every decision, every step he had taken. He had followed the documentation exactly. Then why are they dying? The board chair had asked. Keller had no answer. A human medical journal lay open on the table before him. He had pulled it from the archives, searching desperately for some insight. The publication record for Dr. Raymond Foster showed a stunning fact: 0 published papers, 0 conference presentations, 0 formal technique patents, yet Foster had revolutionized trauma surgery across 4 sectors. He had procedures named after him that were not actually documented anywhere. He had saved thousands of lives using methods that apparently existed only in his mind. Keller realized the horrible truth. Foster had never published because he had never formalized his techniques. He simply did what seemed right in each moment, adapting and improvising based on decades of human medical knowledge that was far ahead of council standards. The documentation showed what Foster did, but not the intuitive reasoning that made his decisions correct. Keller stood and walked to the window, overlooking the station's main ward. 3 more critical patients lay in beds below. He would try to save them using the procedures in the manual. And some of them would probably die because he was following instructions without understanding the wisdom behind them. On Nexus, senior economist Plev presented his findings to the Planetary Finance Committee. The holographic displays surrounding him painted a picture of cascading failure. 34 financial institutions have collapsed in 3 weeks, Plev reported, his voice tight with stress. The pattern is clear. They all depended on human expertise in ways we never documented. A committee member interrupted. Then we hire new experts. We train replacements. Plev shook his head. You do not understand. The humans were not just experts. They were the foundation of our entire system. They managed risk assessment algorithms that our quantum computers could not match. They provided liquidity during volatile periods. They guaranteed loans across 73 sectors. And they did all of this quietly, without taking credit, just collecting modest fees. He pulled up a specific example. This trading algorithm was written by human programmer Lisa Grant. It has been running for 5 years with a 94% success rate. Since she left, it has failed 17 times. We have the code. We can read every line. But we cannot figure out why she modified it daily or how she knew when to override it. The Nexus exchange had dropped 22% in 3 weeks. Panic selling was spreading. Wealthy families were moving assets off-world, afraid of total collapse. How did this happen? Another committee member asked. How did one species become so integral to our economy? Plev had no good answer. They were just better than us, he said finally. At everything. High Arbiter Velm convened an emergency council session. Reports flooded in from across council space. Infrastructure failures, rising death rates, economic instability, supply chain disruptions, all within 3 weeks of humanity's departure. This is coincidence, Velen insisted, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Multiple unrelated problems occurring simultaneously. Counselor Tira stood, her datapad glowing. High Arbiter, with respect, the problems are not unrelated. I have compiled a comprehensive analysis. Every failing system has one common factor. She projected her findings across the chamber's main display. A massive web of connections lit up, showing human involvement in thousands of systems across council space. They were everywhere, Tira said. Not in positions of power or prominence. They were technicians, analysts, consultants, advisors. They made things work better, and we never asked how or why. A military representative, Admiral Korvas, stood with urgent news. Our border defense networks have degraded 14% in efficiency. The human technicians we employed were performing what we thought were minor consulting services. It turns out they were compensating for fundamental flaws in our sensor arrays. Compensating how? Velen demanded. We do not know. They never documented the modifications. They just fixed problems as they appeared. More reports came in. Food shipments arriving late. Medicine shortages developing. Power grids fluctuating. Every system humans had touched was now declining. Tira presented her conclusion. Humanity did not control our systems, High Arbiter. They were our systems. They were the invisible glue holding our civilization together. And we expelled them. The chamber fell silent. Send a diplomatic mission to Earth, Velen ordered. Offer them incentives to return. The diplomatic mission reached Earth's communication network 6 days later. Their message was simple. The Council requests humanity's assistance. Name your terms. The response came back within an hour. 2 words. Message UNDLAVRBL. Earth had gone dark. Not hostile, not threatening, just silent. The communication channels that once connected humanity to council space simply did not respond. It was as if Earth had erected an invisible wall around itself on the human colony world of Nova Terra. Now outside council jurisdiction, Ambassador Marcus Webb watched news feeds from council space. Patricia Lawrence sat beside him, reading reports with growing concern. Infrastructure failing on 40 worlds, she said. Medical emergencies on 12. Economic crisis spreading. Marcus, people are dying. People were always dying, Marcus replied, his voice quiet but firm. The difference is that when they died under human care, we figured out why and prevented it from happening again. We improved systems without being asked. We prevented crises before they developed. And the council never noticed because we never demanded recognition. So this is revenge? No, this is education. Marcus gestured at the screens showing council space in crisis. They wanted us gone. We are gone. They have no right to demand we return just because they are finally seeing what we actually did for them. Patricia looked uncomfortable. The council is preparing to send military escorts to Earth to demand cooperation? Marcus smiled, the same cold smile he had shown in the council chambers. Let them try. Earth has been preparing for this possibility since the day we joined the council. We hoped we would never need those preparations. But we are not defenseless. What happens now? Now we wait. The crisis will get worse before they truly understand. And when they finally do, if they ask properly, we will consider responding. On Kragos Prime, the fusion reactor efficiency dropped below 50%. The entire planet faced energy rationing on Thelmer Medical Station. Death rates climbed to twice their pre-human levels on Nexus. The economic crisis entered its 6th week with no end in sight, and Earth remained silent, watching from behind its invisible wall as the Galactic Council learned a lesson about taking people for granted. High Arbiter Velen stood before a closed session of the Council's inner circle, refusing to admit defeat. 6 weeks had passed since humanity's expulsion, and the crisis was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. But Velen's pride would not allow him to beg humans for help. We do not need humanity, he declared, his 6 eyes scanning the faces of the 20 most powerful beings in council space. We need their knowledge. We will reverse engineer what they did, hire experts from other species, and rebuild without them. Counselor Merrick's nodded agreement. The Vryn Syndicate has the best engineers in the galaxy. The Delphinians are master economists. We simply need to apply proper resources to the problem. How much? Someone asked. 2 trillion credits, Velen announced. Emergency funding to solve the infrastructure crisis across all affected sectors. The authorization passed with minimal debate. 2 trillion credits. The largest emergency expenditure in Council history. The Vryn engineers arrived on Kragos Prime 3 days later. Lead engineer Kelvax brought a team of 40 specialists, each one among the finest technical minds in the Vryn Syndicate. They approached the failing fusion reactor with confidence. That confidence lasted 6 hours. This should not work, Kelvax told plant manager Drelk, staring at the reactor schematics with a mixture of awe and confusion. According to every principle of energy physics I know, this design should create a resonance cascade that destroys the reactor within minutes. But it worked perfectly for 3 years under the human engineer, Drelk protested. I know. That is what troubles me. Kelvax zoomed in on a specific coupling. See this? It violates the third law of thermodynamic exchange. Yet somehow it amplifies efficiency by 14%. The human convinced physics to cooperate in ways I cannot explain. The Vryn team spent 3 weeks analyzing the reactor. They produced a 500-page report with a devastating conclusion. They could maintain current operations at reduced efficiency, but could not restore human-level performance without understanding the theoretical basis behind the modifications. That theoretical basis existed only in Victoria Hayes's mind, and she was now 30 light-years away. The reactor continued operating at 46% efficiency. Kragos Prime's industrial output dropped by half. Unemployment reached 30%. Riots broke out in the capital city. On Thelmer Medical Station, a new phenomenon began. Wealthy council citizens started disappearing from their homeworlds, traveling secretly to human space for medical treatment. The council had officially closed all borders between human and council territory. But individual humans still had the right to practice medicine anywhere they chose. Dr. Raymond Foster found his small clinic on Nova Terra suddenly flooded with alien patients, willing to pay extraordinary sums. A Thelmarian aristocrat arrived with his dying daughter. The girl had the same condition that Senator Velkar's daughter had survived under Foster's care. Under council doctors, 3 other children with the condition had died in the past month. Why did you come all this way? Foster asked. The aristocrat's voice broke. Because you can save her. Our doctors cannot. Foster performed the surgery. The girl survived. News spread through underground networks. The council tried to ban medical travel to human space, citing safety concerns and illegal border crossing, but desperate families ignored the ban. A black market developed overnight, with smugglers charging enormous fees to transport critical patients to human doctors. High Arbiter Velen ordered arrests, but local authorities on many worlds quietly refused to enforce the ban. Too many of their own families had benefited from human medical expertise on Nexus. The economic crisis entered its 2nd month. Senior economist Plev watched helplessly as the sophisticated financial systems humans had maintained collapsed in slow motion. His assistant, a young analyst named Drella, pulled up one of the algorithms Lisa Grant had written. Sir, I have studied this code for 200 hours. I understand what it does. I can follow every logical step. But I do not know when to use it versus when to override it. That was the human's gift, Plev said tiredly. They did not just build systems. They understood when systems needed human judgment. They knew when to trust the algorithm and when to trust their instincts. 3 more major trading consortiums collapsed. A dozen planets faced sovereign debt defaults. The economic contagion was spreading faster than any disease. The council authorized another trillion credits to stabilize the markets. The money disappeared into the crisis like water into sand. without human expertise managing the systems. The problems multiplied faster than money could solve them. Admiral Kovaz presented a classified military briefing to the council that sent shockwaves through the chamber. The news was worse than anyone had imagined. Our defensive capabilities have degraded 33%, Kovaz reported, his voice grim. Border incursions have increased 51%. The Kragno horde has moved 4 fleets closer to our borders. They are testing our defenses. How is this possible? Veln demanded. We have the same ships, the same weapons, the same technology we had 2 months ago, but we do not have the humans, High Arbiter. Kovaz displayed tactical maps showing gaps in the defensive network. Our sensor arrays have blind spots. They always have. The human technicians somehow compensated for them. Our battle coordination systems have processing delays. Human analysts wrote real-time patch code that smoothed them out. Our intelligence analysis missed patterns that human analysts caught instinctively. He pulled up a star chart showing hostile fleet movements. The Kragnar horde is not stupid. They have noticed our defensive networks are degrading. They are probing for weaknesses. And they are finding them. Send a military delegation to Earth, Veln ordered. Demand their cooperation in the name of galactic security. On what authority? Kovaz asked quietly. We expelled them, High Arbiter. We have no authority over Earth anymore. The military delegation reached Earth's border 3 days later. They were met not by diplomats but by an automated message. Human space is closed to council vessels. Any unauthorized entry will be considered an act of war. This is your only warning. The delegation returned with a disturbing report. Earth's defensive networks had expanded significantly. Human colony worlds now bristled with weapon systems that made council technology look primitive. Somehow, in just 2 months, humanity had fortified their space to a degree that would take the council decades to achieve. How did they build so quickly? Veln asked. The answer was simple and terrifying. They had not built quickly. They had been preparing for years, maybe decades. Building quietly, without announcement, as if they had always known this day might come. On the border world of Sentinel-7, the unthinkable happened. A Kragnar raiding fleet penetrated council space and attacked a civilian mining station. 4,000 civilians died before council forces could respond. The attack should have been impossible. Sentinel, the 7th defense network, was among the most sophisticated in council space. With overlapping sensor coverage and automated response systems, investigators discovered the attack came through a gap in the sensor network. A gap that human technician Lavra Morrison had been quietly covering for 3 years with a custom monitoring protocol. That protocol was never formally documented. Lavra was now on Earth, 40 light-years away. The attack made headlines across council space. Questions were asked in every government. Why did the defenses fail? Who was responsible? How did one human technician's absence create such a critical vulnerability? The answer led to more questions. How many other Lavra Morrisons were there? How many other invisible gaps were humans covering? How much of council security was actually human security in disguise? Counselor Tira compiled a comprehensive report that took 3 weeks to finish. The document was 8,000 pages long. The conclusion fit in a single paragraph. Humanity did not infiltrate our systems. They did not sabotage our infrastructure. They simply made everything work better through countless small improvements, most of which were never formally documented. They were competent to a degree we did not recognize, because we mistook their quiet efficiency for normalcy. We have not lost an ally. We have lost the foundation our civilization was built on. High Arbiter Veln read the report 3 times. Then he read it a 4th time, looking for some argument to refute it. He found none. Ambassador Marcus Webb received a personal message from Counselor Tira. It was not sent through official channels, but through a private network that few knew existed. Ambassador Webb. Tira's message began, I know you have no obligation to respond. But I am asking anyway, not as a counselor, but as someone watching her civilization collapse. We made a mistake. A catastrophic mistake. People are dying. Economies are failing. Our defenses are crumbling. And I do not know how to fix it. If you ever cared about the lives you saved, the systems you improved, the civilization you helped build, please respond. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Patricia sat beside him, waiting. What will you tell her? Patricia asked. Nothing yet, Marcus said quietly. They need to fall further before they truly understand. This is not about revenge. This is about ensuring they never take anyone for granted again. He closed the message without responding. EF rate reached 3 times pre-human levels on Nexus Economic Co. The Galactic Council convened on the neutral moon of Turthos, a location chosen for emergency summits when the main chambers were deemed too politically charged. 12 weeks had passed since humanity's expulsion. 12 weeks that had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. Thousands of delegates gathered in the ancient assembly hall. But the atmosphere was nothing like the triumphant session that had expelled humanity. This was the gathering of a civilization facing its own mortality. High Arbiter Veln opened the session, and for the first time since taking office, his voice carried no arrogance. His 6 eyes were dull with exhaustion. We face cascading system failures across 19 sectors, Veln announced. Infrastructure, medical, economic, military, and civilian systems are failing simultaneously. Our analysts have identified the common factor in all failures. He paused, the admission physically painful. The absence of humanity. The chamber erupted in voices. Some delegates shouted denials. Others demanded immediate action. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Finally, accepting what they had refused to believe, Councillor Marek stood, his face pale. High Arbiter, with respect, one species cannot be responsible for failures across our entire civilization. They are not responsible, Councillor Tira interrupted sharply, rising from her seat. That is exactly the point. They never controlled anything. They never held power. They simply made everything work better, and we were too blind to notice. She activated holographic displays that filled the chamber. The data was devastating. Infrastructure, humans had maintained, upgraded, and optimized 3,200 major systems. Their absence resulted in cumulative efficiency losses averaging 41%. Medical. Human medical professionals had improved survival rates by 29% across all major facilities. Mortality rates now exceeded pre-human levels by 88%. Economic. Human financial experts had managed risk worth 16 trillion credits annually. Their withdrawal had triggered a depression affecting 79 worlds. Military. Human analysts and technicians had enhanced council defense capabilities by 36%. Their absence had emboldened enemies across 4 borders. They did all of this quietly, Tira concluded, her voice echoing in the silent chamber. They never sought recognition. Never demanded power. They saw problems and fixed them, and we accused them of manipulation and expelled them for being too successful. A delegate from the outer colony stood. Then we apologize and invite them back. Simple, is it? Tira asked. We expelled them based on false accusations. We ignored their contributions. We treated competence as a crime. Why would they trust us again? The chamber descended into argument. Some delegates insisted humanity had a moral obligation to help. Others argued that showing weakness by begging would damage council prestige. A few suggested military action to force Earth's cooperation. Admiral Korvas stood, and his presence commanded silence. The old warrior had led council forces for 3 decades. His voice carried weight that even High Arbiter Veln respected. 5 days ago, Korvas began, his voice heavy. The Kragnar Horde launched coordinated attacks on 7 border stations. 53,000 casualties. They are testing our defenses and finding them weak. He displayed tactical maps showing enemy fleet movements. The Kragnar War fleet now numbers 214 capital ships. They are positioned 12 light-years from Sentinel Sector. Without human expertise, our defensive posture has degraded to levels not seen in 50 years. If they attack in force, we will lose. How long before they attack? Someone asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. They are waiting to confirm our weakness. The chamber fell silent. The abstract concept of needing humanity had suddenly become concrete and immediate. Without human help, the Council would face military defeat. A new voice spoke, one that had remained silent throughout the crisis. Investigative journalist Pleven of the Nexus News Collective stood in the observer's gallery. "May I address the Council?" Pleven asked. Verlaine, desperate for any new perspective, granted permission. Pleven's report had been published 3 days earlier and had gone viral across Council space. The article was titled, "The Humans We Never Saw," and it had fundamentally changed public perception of the crisis. For 3 months, I investigated humanity's presence in Council space, Pleven said, his voice calm but powerful. I interviewed 2,300 beings who worked alongside humans. The testimony is consistent and damning. He played recordings. A Kragosi factory worker. She just knew when equipment would fail before diagnostics showed problems. A Thelmarian nurse. He could diagnose conditions our best scanners missed. A Nexus trader. They saw market patterns our artificial intelligence could not detect. Humanity was not just present in obvious positions, Pleven continued. They were everywhere? The maintenance technician who kept life support at 99% efficiency. The agricultural consultant who increased crop yields by 18%. The junior analyst who predicted system crashes 3 days in advance. They were the difference between adequate and excellent. And we never noticed because excellence was just their normal. The reporter's words struck harder than any official briefing. This was not council propaganda. This was independent journalism revealing uncomfortable truths. We did not just exile allies, Pleven concluded. We exiled the people who made our civilization work. And now we are reaping the consequences. As the session broke for deliberation, a message arrived from an unexpected source. 7 worlds, including Kragos Prime, had sent a joint declaration to the Council. We, the undersigned autonomous worlds, hereby announce our intention to negotiate independent agreements with Earth for the restoration of human expertise. We recognize Council authority, but we will not allow our populations to suffer while Council pride delays action. If the Council will not act, we will. It was an unprecedented challenge to Council authority. 7 worlds were threatening to fracture the alliance rather than continue the crisis. High Arbiter Velm faced a choice: crack down on these rebellious worlds and risk civil war, or admit defeat and approach Earth with humility. The vote was called. In a stunning rebuke, Velm lost his position as High Arbiter by a margin of 2,400 to 873. The Council had blamed him for the crisis, and he paid with his position. Councillor Terra was elevated to High Arbiter within the hour. Her first act was to draft a formal message to Earth. She spent 6 hours writing it, revising every word. Knowing that humanity's response would determine the fate of galactic civilization, she recorded the message personally, without diplomatic filters or political language. Just her, speaking directly to the camera, human to human in the most literal sense. Ambassador Webb, Ambassador Laurent, people of Earth, Terra began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. I am High Arbiter Terra. When your species was expelled, I was one of few voices who questioned the decision. I was ignored. I cannot undo that injustice, but I can acknowledge it. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. You were right. We were wrong. We accused you of crimes when you were simply competent. We feared your success when we should have studied it. We exiled you when we should have honored you. Our infrastructure is failing. Our people are dying. Our borders are collapsing. And we have finally understood what you were to us. Tira's voice strengthened. I am not demanding your assistance. Demands assume authority we no longer have. I am asking, humbly, not because we deserve your help, but because millions of innocent lives depend on it. If you choose to help us, we will accept any terms you propose. If you choose not to help us, we will accept that judgment as well. The message transmitted to Earth, then came the waiting on Earth. In the Global Assembly Chamber, Ambassador Marcus Webb played Tira's message for the assembled representatives of humanity. The chamber held 500 delegates from every nation and colony world. The debate that followed was intense. Some argued for immediate assistance. Others demanded guarantees before any human returned to council space. A few advocated for permanent separation. Ambassador Patricia Lawrence spoke for many when she said, "We cannot watch millions die just to teach the council a lesson. That makes us as callous as they were." But Marcus countered, "If we return without conditions, we return to the same system that expelled us. They will take us for granted again, and next time the crisis might be worse." The debate continued for 18 hours. Finally, consensus emerged. Earth would respond, but with clear terms that would prevent future exploitation. The message Earth sent back was broadcast publicly across all networks simultaneously. No private channels. No diplomatic backrooms. Everything transparent. Ambassador Lawrence delivered the terms. First, formal recognition. Every human contribution must be acknowledged publicly and officially. Second, representation. Earth receives permanent seats proportional to our contributions. Third, protection. No species may be expelled without 90% supermajority. Fourth, compensation. Fair market rates for our expertise. Fifth, autonomy. Earth may withdraw at any time without penalty. The message concluded with Marcus Webb's personal note: "We never wanted power. We still do not. But we will not be invisible again." The vote took less than an hour. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, now under the leadership of High Arbiter Tira, 3,000 delegates cast their decision. The holographic display showed the results in real time: 2,892 in favor, 108 opposed. Earth's terms were accepted. The announcement went out across all council networks. Humanity is welcomed back to the Galactic Council with full recognition, equal representation, and honored status. We acknowledge our error and invite our human colleagues to return. The response from Earth came within minutes. Human experts will begin returning to council space within 48 hours. We look forward to working together as true partners. The human return was nothing like their departure. When they left, they had been invisible workers slipping away in silence. When they returned, they were celebrated heroes arriving to save a civilization that finally understood their worth on Kragos Prime. Victoria Hayes stepped off the transport to find plant manager Drelk and 15,000 workers waiting at the spaceport. They had been standing there for 6 hours, refusing to leave until she arrived. When she appeared, the crowd erupted in cheers that could be heard across the city. Drelk approached her with tears in his compound eyes. "Thank you for coming back." Victoria smiled, genuinely touched. "Let's get your reactor working properly. I have missed this place." She walked into the control room she had designed 3 years earlier. The displays showed the reactor running at 31% efficiency, barely functional. The Vryn engineers who had tried to fix it stood aside respectfully. Acknowledging their failure, Victoria's hands moved across the controls with the confidence of someone who understood every molecule of the system. She did not consult manuals or run diagnostics. She simply felt the reactor's rhythms, sensed where the balance had broken, and corrected it with small, precise adjustments within 6 hours. The reactor was running at 70% efficiency. Within 3 days, it was back to full capacity. Within a week, Victoria had trained a team of Kragosi engineers not just to maintain the reactor, but to understand the principles behind it. "The key," she told them, "is not following instructions. Instructions tell you what to do. Understanding tells you why. Once you understand why, you can adapt when situations change." On Thelmer Medical Station, Dr. Raymond Foster returned to find Dr. Keller waiting with the entire medical staff. Keller's pride had been shattered by months of watching patients die, but his dedication remained intact. "Teach us," Keller said simply. "We do not want to just survive. We want to be as good as you showed us we could be." Foster agreed, but not as a superior instructing inferiors. He worked alongside Keller and the other doctors as colleagues, explaining not just what he did, but how he thought through each decision. "Medicine is not just about following procedures," Foster explained during a complex surgery. It is about understanding each patient as an individual. This patient has the same condition as the last one, but her biology responds differently. See this marker in her blood work? It tells us we need to adjust the treatment by 15%. The textbook does not mention this because textbooks cannot account for every variation. The Thelmarian doctors learned not just Foster's techniques but his approach to thinking about medicine. Survival rates began climbing immediately. On Nexus, James Park returned to find the financial systems in chaos. Senior economist Plev met him with unconcealed relief. "Can you fix this?" Plev asked, gesturing at displays showing cascading market failures. "We can fix it together," James replied. "But first, I need to teach you what the algorithms cannot do." He spent 2 weeks working side by side with Plev and his team, not just restarting the systems humans had maintained, but explaining the human judgment that made those systems work. "See this pattern?" James pointed at a market trend. "The algorithm says to buy. But look at these 3 factors the algorithm does not weight properly. They indicate the trend is false. Human judgment says to wait. They waited. The market crashed 6 hours later, exactly as James predicted." "How did you know?" Plev asked, amazed. "Experience, intuition, pattern recognition that comes from analyzing thousands of similar situations. The algorithm is a tool, but tools need skilled users who know when to trust them and when to override them." The Nexus economic team began learning not just to use the tools but to think like the humans who had built them. Slowly, painfully, the financial crisis began to stabilize, but the greatest test came on the military front. The Kragnar war fleet was 8 days from Sentinel Sector when Marcus Webb arrived at Council Military Headquarters. Admiral Corvaz greeted him personally. "Can you help us, Ambassador?" "I am not here as ambassador," Marcus replied. "I am here as someone who helped design your defensive network 5 years ago." "Let me see what has degraded." Marcus assembled a team of 40 human analysts, technicians, and strategists. They worked around the clock, not replacing Council systems but optimizing them exactly as they had done before. The difference was that this time, Council personnel watched and learned. Marcus explained every modification, every adjustment, every patch of code. "Your sensor network has blind spots," Marcus showed Admiral Kovaz. "It always has. We cannot eliminate them because of physics limitations. But we can position monitoring drones to cover the gaps. See these coordinates? Place automated stations here, here, and here." Kovaz deployed the stations. The blind spots disappeared. "Your battle coordination algorithm has a processing lag of 0.3 seconds, Marcus continued. "In normal situations, that is irrelevant. But when coordinating fleet movements during combat, that lag compounds. By the time your ships respond to threats, the threats have moved. We wrote real-time interpolation code that predicts threat movement and adjusts automatically. The Council technicians implemented the code, watching as response times improved dramatically. On day 7, the defensive network was restored to full capability. On day 8, when the Kragnar fleet arrived, they encountered not the weakened border they expected, but Council forces operating at peak efficiency. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Kragnar fleet, accustomed to easy raids against degraded defenses, found themselves facing coordinated resistance that anticipated their every move. They lost 37 capital ships before retreating in disarray. Council space was secure. The invasion was repelled 3 months after humanity's return. High Arbiter Tira addressed the Council with Marcus Webb standing beside her as Earth's official representative with full authority. "I want to speak about power," Tira began. "For thousands of years we understood power as control, the ability to force others to comply with our will. By that definition, we believed we were powerful and humanity was weak." She paused, looking around the chamber at 3,000 representatives. "We were wrong. There is another kind of power, the power to make things work, the power to solve problems others cannot solve, the power to see what needs to be done and do it without being asked. That is the power humanity possessed all along. We were simply too arrogant to recognize it." Tira turned to Marcus. Ambassador Webb, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer formal apology for our arrogance, our ingratitude, and our injustice. We expelled you because you made us look inadequate. We accused you of manipulation because you were more competent than we were. We were threatened by your excellence when we should have been learning from it. Marcus nodded slowly. Apology accepted, High Arbiter? But I ask you to remember this moment. Remember what you learned? Because the next time someone makes your civilization work better, you might want to thank them instead of expelling them. The chamber erupted in applause. Not polite diplomatic acknowledgement, but genuine, thunderous appreciation. 3,000 beings from across the galaxy standing to honor the species they had wronged, but Tira was not finished. She produced a document that had taken 2 months to draft with input from hundreds of worlds. The Council hereby adopts the Competence Protection Act, she announced. No species may be punished for excellence. No member may be expelled for success. Contribution must be recognized. Expertise must be valued. And those who make our civilization work deserve not suspicion but gratitude. The act passed unanimously. Years later, students across Council space studied this period in mandatory history courses. It was called The Quiet Departure, and it became the most analyzed event in modern galactic history. The lesson was taught in every school. Competence does not need to announce itself. Real power is not about control, but about making things work. And sometimes the most important people in any society are the ones you never notice until they are gone. Humanity never sought to rule the Galactic Council. They did not need to. They had proven something far more important, that being excellent at what you do, helping others without demanding recognition, and quietly making the world better is its own form of power, a power that cannot be taken by force or granted by authority. A power that comes from competence, dedication, and the simple act of caring enough to do things right, the Council learned. Slowly, painfully, but they learned that, in the end, was the most human thing.